Hiring the right person to run demand gen is really hard. Plenty of candidates can talk the talk, dropping buzzwords and reciting everything they've learned from thought leaders on LinkedIn and picked up from the podcasts that they listen to. But very few can back up their experiences with an in-depth understanding of what good demand gen looks like in 2022. We've gotten really good feedback so far on our hiring episodes, so we're going to talk through the 7 questions we used when interviewing candidates for the demand gen role on our team. Demand Gen U is officially in session. Let's do it. All right, new format. It's our podcast. We can do whatever we want, but we're going to change it up today. And we are actually going to read through the 7 questions. I think it was originally a blog post that Gil had written years ago, right?
Yeah. Yep. It was
I want to say
top performing
2016-ish.
Yeah, super old. It was here when I got here, and it was by far, I think, the top performing content we had on our website.
So when Justin was looking at updating existing content, he saw just how much search traffic that was getting for, I forget the exact term that it was. I think it was like demand gen interview or demand gen interview questions or something like that.
Yep.
And I think just within the last, probably 6-ish months, we went back through and updated it. And it was a good blog post to begin with, but I think it's a kick-ass blog post now.
Yeah, it's, this is the thing. I'm not great at it. I've never been great at, especially consistent interviews and what questions should I ask. And even though I've been hiring for so many years, I apologize to all the people I've interviewed out there. I'm still getting better at it. And so having something like this, I should have used something like this, you know what I mean, in the past, or something similar for any role you hire. And so, I think it's good to have some consistency. So hopefully this will help you, figure out some of those main questions you want to ask everybody that comes through the funnel, your hiring funnel.
So here's what we're thinking of doing, and we'll see how well that we stick to this. But we're going to go through each question, and then Jason's going to give his take on what a good answer and bad answer looks like, and then I'll do the same. And then if we both are about to say the same thing, then maybe we'll pass on one of them just so we're not repeating each other. But I think this should be pretty fun.
Yeah, and I have not looked at these since we rewrote
the blog post.
I know, since we rewrote it, however long that was ago. So yeah, no, it's fresh. It'll come. It'll be right off the cuff. Yeah.
Well, all right, let's play a game then. What are the 7 questions? Let's see how well you know.
No idea. I think one of them. I don't even. Nope.
I like that answer better than you trying to fake it and feeling.
I was going to try and guess, but no, I'll just say, I have no clue. What are we talking about here?
Let's start with the first one. So, Jason, you kick it off first on what a good answer is for this and what you're looking for. So, describe your approach to optimizing campaigns and the metrics you use.
Cool. So, here I'm looking for, do they have a process? Because if they've been doing this for long enough, they should. You know what I mean? Because we talk a lot about how if you're not experimenting or optimizing, then you're leaving a lot of money on the table. And so optimization of campaigns should be or just of anything, should really be a core capability or skill for a demand gen marketer. And so I'm looking for them to jump right in and be oh, yes, an immediate answer, not something, this isn't one that they should have to hopefully think through much. It should just be ingrained in them. So I'm looking for an immediate, oh, yes, here's what I do. And of course, when it comes to optimization, we're looking for how are you using data? How are you using data to feed back into your optimization? Do you think about, how do you think about goal setting even, and what I'm looking for here is, hey, I'm going to set a goal up here, but I don't think I'm going to be at that goal when it first starts. You know what I mean? Because you're I need to get something out there, see how it lands, and then I need to tweak it and optimize it to get to that point. So I like to see, how are you thinking about setting that goal? And do you set it in a way where I can see that you're thinking hey, I'm not going to get it right the first time. And so then I need to get it out there, get some learnings, and then, optimize it from there, and improve the performance from there. So I'm looking for that kind of mindset.
All right. You answered half the question. I'm going to be a stickler. Metrics. What metrics are you looking for?
Yeah. Yep. So ultimately, I'm looking for them to say that they're ultimately optimizing to revenue. And so if they don't mention that at some point, that I'm just trying to think, like, would that be just a complete like, nope? I I can't imagine that it wouldn't be. Like if they don't say like, yeah, I'm trying to ultimately I'm trying to optimize to what's going to drive the most revenue. But then I want to look to see, do they understand like, okay, revenue is 3 to 6 months down the road because of our sales cycle. So then what am I looking at leading indicators leading up to that? And how do you think about those leading indicators? Yeah, but ultimately revenue. Hopefully they're mentioning that.
So, all right, I like the answer. I'll give you a 4 out of 5. I'm kidding. So I would say I'm going to start with the revenue piece first because I think, we're getting closer and closer to having our own revenue target at Metadata. And I like to think that we're a little bit ahead of the curve than where some other companies are. So if somebody's not measuring themselves against revenue right now, but they have a desire to move down the funnel, like I still look at that as an acceptable answer. Now, if somebody's going to mention influence pipeline as one of the first metrics that they rattle off, then I'm like, okay, let's better understand what they're actually trying to measure, because I would never use influence pipeline in front of our CFO. But as far as optimizing campaigns, I agree with pretty much everything that you said. The two things that I would add are their approach to like refreshing creative and how frequently they're looking at that. That was something new to me prior to joining or since joining Metadata, of just how important that is and the frequency of how often people are seeing your ads and how stale the creative can get, because it can get stale pretty quickly. So I think that's a big thing that I'd want somebody to hopefully hit on. And then the other thing is how post-campaign, like what's the post-mortem process look like? How are they looking at what truly worked, what didn't work, and how are they going to then share those learnings and incorporate that into the next campaign or campaigns that they launch? Because I think it's, we're guilty of it sometimes too. You just get so bogged down in launch the next thing, launch the next campaign, get it out the door, that you don't ever pause, for a little bit just to figure out what worked and what didn't work. So if somebody mentions that and has a good process for that, one, I want to talk to them and steal that. But two, that's a really good answer in my book.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if there's a way to tell, like, do they just have an optimization mindset in their life? Because that's often sometimes too, is like, if it's just a general mindset, that like, hey, this is great, but it can probably be better. It's like, it's always like, this is really good, so recognizing that it's good. So first of all, like, you don't want people that just never think they're good enough, right? That's a different issue. But like, hey, it's good enough now. Yeah, it's great now. But you know what? There are I can still tweak it and I can get some more out of this. And so, and then, if they think about that in life, as well as in work. And I don't know, there's probably some questions you could ask about that to kind of see how they think about it in their personal lives. That is a big plus too. And then, then you kind of know like, okay, it's in their mindset. It's not just like a tactic they do.
Yeah, like the people that use Asana boards for their personal lives. Right, those people do exist. All right, next question. So I think this is an interesting one because I have my own take on this. But which tools do you have experience with? What are you looking for out of that question?
Yeah, metadata. Honestly, like no. But more recently, actually, we are starting to see people like job descriptions that are asking for metadata expertise, cool. Which really makes my day. No, here again, I'm looking for like the curiosity in the tool, like almost a breadth of the tools, and just an understanding of how they think about tools. And so what I'm looking for here, maybe a little bit more leaning to the way I think about it, but I'm looking for people who don't just say like, oh yeah, I get this all in one tool and it does everything for me, and I won't name any tools, but some of them are nonsense. But like, it's like, hey, here's what I do. I get this tool and then I use it. So I'm looking more for, because again, this is a personal thinking maybe, but the way I think about it is the best marketers are not using all-in-one tools because they realize like an all-in-one tool is trying to be everything to everybody. And by being everything to everybody, you're nothing special to anyone. And so then the best marketers then would find niche tools that maybe I've never heard about, or something, and they understand there's uniqueness somewhere in their funnel, and they need a unique tool in that area to be better than their competition. And that's kind of really more what I'm looking for is, again, how they think about the tools, not necessarily the tools that they're familiar with. Of course, that's important. Like if you're in demand gen, B2B demand gen, you should know how to run campaigns in LinkedIn. You should know how to run reports in Salesforce, HubSpot, those kinds of things. But really it's like, how do you think about what's your perspective on the tools you might need to do your job? How do you identify the need for a new tool? How do you make sure? I'm also looking for people that talk about maximizing the use of tools, because oftentimes we all buy one and then it's like, oh, okay, we've implemented like 15% of it. And then we go buy another tool. The same tool could do it, but we go buy another one because we didn't implement that part of it. So yeah, I'm just looking for like that kind of thinking about like, how do you think about technology?
So before I answer, please tell me the nonsense joke was intentional, or did that just come to you?
Of course it was. Yeah,
Okay.
It was.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just okay.
No,
I'm
this
just
is
making sure.
This comes from last night. Yeah, I was like halfway asleep, and I started getting some creative ideas that are horrible. And I'll tell you about those later. Yeah,
that's a series in itself. Yes. All right. So I would say for me, it comes down to a couple things, and I think the first thing that I'll say comes from getting my start in consulting. So I'm a big people, process, technology mindset person, and technology usually coming last, and trying to have a process in place first with some people and then the tool. Except oftentimes many marketers pick the tool first, thinking that the tool is going to solve everything else. So I think how they evaluate the need for something and when they need something is a big part of, I think, what a good answer looks like for me. And then the other thing that I would mention, and I kind of picked this up from you, but I was thinking like this at my last company too, which is, yes, there are, tools that we're all familiar with that people are using, right now, but there's the next wave of up and coming tools that are in kind of new categories. So I do love to hear how tuned in they are to stuff that, like, let's just say website personalization. We're not there yet, but we've talked about it. And I think we even talked about it with this candidate. It's becoming a mainstream tool, and there are other categories of tools like it, but you get to see a little bit more into their thought process of how far down the line that they're thinking, because we like to take demos of tools well before we actually need it, just so that we're aware of what's out there in the market.
Yep. Yeah. It's so it's not as much about the tools that you know and how you know them. Yeah. So it's more about how do you think about the application of technology to your role. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. And like you just said, not seeing technology as the savior, and knowing that, hey, the savior is us. Like, we got to do the work. There may be some technology out there that'll help support us, but like the main changes have to happen internally.
And then the last thing that just came to mind, just because I've worked for previous bosses who have operated like this, but just because they see some, best in breed tech stack of these 5 things means, we got to go buy all 5 of those things for this company, not actually knowing what your real need is at the end of the day, or if it's even going to work for your business, because so many people just buy what they see in, some diagram out there, whether it's a Scott Brinker diagram or something else, and just say, because Scott Brinker said it, I need it. And he knows what he's talking about, but he also wouldn't recommend that people just buy the same 5 tools at every single company.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And it goes back to like knowing where you're at, where that uniqueness is in your funnel, if you think about it that way, and then figuring out what the best technology is to apply. Yep. And it could be completely different. Even 2 companies in the same exact category, their stack needs could be different. And so, just having that kind of like perspective is important.
All right. The next two questions are going to be soapbox questions that you're encouraged to get on your soapbox. So the first one, do all B2B companies need to be doing ABM?
Yeah, and I like this question because this helps us, I don't know if weed out, but understand who really is around buzzwords, and who actually really thinks about this stuff. And so, ABM has been a buzzword in B2B for, I don't know, 7-8 years now, maybe.
Yeah.
And to the point where CMOs often don't even understand what it is, really. They can't even define it, yet they're saying, we need to be doing ABM. And it's easy to say that because you're like, well, of course, we should be selling to accounts, But then you dig in and you're like, oh, they don't really understand what it is, or when you need to apply it. So a lot of, if you're a B2B marketer who is like, okay, like maybe you're starting out, or I don't know. It's just, if you say every B2B company should be doing ABM, it tells me that you don't really know what ABM means.
Oh, you mean
you may be able, oh God, no, ABM is not B2B. Yes. Yeah. And it's helpful because we can at least quickly tell where you're at in this kind of area. And so what I'm looking for here there's no rules, right? So it's nothing like, oh, if you're this and this and this, you don't do ABM. I mean, I'd love it if you had that perspective. So I love it when somebody comes to me like, nope, less than 50,000 ASP, and they've got like rules. You don't need to do ABM. And I love to hear, oh, great. Okay, so you've thought about this. You understand that companies can get, like a B2B company can get by completely, reach $100 million in ARR easily without doing ABM. And so I'm looking for that, really. It's like, and then I'm looking for, do you understand what ABM is too at the same time? So can you, and I don't expect anyone to like be able to like have a quick, crisp definition. I expect them to kind of, wander around it a little bit. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yep. So I expect them to wander around it a little bit, but ultimately kind of understand what it is. And even better, if they can just say like, it really isn't anything, like if they can say something like, it's really just, not really, it just talks about good B2B marketing, it's like, or this is just a very solid approach to B2B marketing, but it's one of many. and just that understanding of like, yeah, we're selling to accounts, but still it's people buying, and so, yeah, that they don't get lost in like, oh, it's just account-based marketing, account-based marketing. It's all about accounts. Well, yes, about identifying the right ones and making sure you know why, but then it's about attracting the people, the people there. So that's really what I'm looking for, not too big of a soapbox on there, but and hopefully they don't talk about tools. So that if they go into tools, then it's then I'm like, you lost me. Yeah.
So I would say a couple things, and I'll steal a little from your blog post, but I think it's really accurate in this case, is an it depends answer, or at least starting with that, is I would say acceptable for most questions, because then you can see how people think through it, but it's especially acceptable for this question because you then start to see how are they looking at whether ABM makes sense for a given company and industry, and the different factors that they're looking at. And then the other thing that I would use as a follow-up question if they say, no, they don't need to be doing ABM, but here's when ABM makes sense, is I would ask them to kind of walk me through, all right, how have you stood up ABM pilots in, your current job or your past job, and hopefully see them start small and start with a few sales reps in the accounts that they're working on and proving that out before rolling it out to a much larger scale. And again, hopefully not hearing a tool as one of the first things that they're doing when they're trying to roll out an ABM, because you can do ABM without a tool. It's difficult, yes, but you don't actually need it. And then I would love if somebody just straight up said no. They don't need to be doing ABM and give a quick answer. I'd be like, yes, I like this person.
Yeah, definitely. So another one where it's a question that you can answer, but through that answer, we're really getting other understanding of you. Yeah, and so this is an important one, I think, for demand gen folks.
Alrighty, here's the actual soapbox one. What are your thoughts on marketing attribution?
So, do you want to answer this one first? I get all the softballs, so I get all the first answers. Do you want to try this one first?
Yeah, I'll start first here. So, I would say if they're wearing that T-shirt that you have that says marketing attribution is made up, I would just hire them on the spot. No, what I would actually say is I would start to see and I'll just compare it to my own experience. Have I used attribution tools in the past? Yes. Have they been any better than what I had using very simple first and last touch attribution? Not really. And it's much more expensive to make that same mistake too. So for a good answer, I'm interested in the type of attribution that they're using and why. And then more importantly, that they're aware of what the limitations are of any attribution that they're using, because there's no perfect attribution model, and as long as they're aware of, hey, it does this well, but this is where your blind spots are, as long as they follow it up with that second part of the answer, I think that's a really good answer for me. And then I do like to see, it's more marketing ops, but also demand gen people need to be pretty fluent in this, is how they've set it up, using their marketing automation platform and Salesforce or whatever CRM that they're using, just to see how technical they might be. Now, oftentimes demand gen managers at early stage companies have to wear the marketing ops hat too. Not all the time, but I would like to see them be a little technical and at least be able to give requirements to the marketing ops person, or just straight up set it up themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking for all that. And then to me, it's like almost any answer is okay as long as they back it up very intelligently. So if I had somebody first touch, great. One of the simplest ones, sweet, tell me why, and if they had a good answer, an intelligent answer of why, I'd be okay, good. I think what I'm looking for on the negative side are people that either trust it implicitly, oh yeah, I use this platform and we use it to make all of our decisions. Because what I'm really looking for is an understanding that the digital touch points that are trackable for attribution are some of the most lightweight and least impactful activities that can happen in a sales cycle. The more important ones are the word of mouth. I'm going to go to this forum and I'm going to ask people that are in my same role if they've used this, or if they've done this before, or, and so an understanding that, yeah, it's great on the digital side, but man, we're missing out on some of the most important stuff. So this is how I think about it. So I'm looking for that kind of understanding too, that this yep, it's part of the story, and there's part of the story we'll never be able to really understand or connect to this digital part.
The two other things that I thought of as you were going through that answer, which I think would be a home run answer, are the people who are looking for more of the qualitative attribution. So have they set up self-reported attribution?
Yes.
Have they set up gong trackers or some sort of call tracker where they're looking for specific things like how we do with this podcast and other stuff, and just see, outside of the stuff that you can report out on, what are the other puzzle pieces that they're trying to measure qualitatively or just collect qualitatively to paint the full picture, because it's imperfect.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's a good one. And an understanding of that stuff. Yep.
I have no idea what you meant by this question, so I'm going to wing it, but I'll answer first. What are some non-standard things you've done for your demand gen campaigns? I know that you said you're looking for something that you've never heard of here, but I like to see not something that you typically do in paid campaigns. Very rarely is there crazy experimentation or something new in paid campaigns. I think it's more maybe something that you did around an activation or an offsite event at a big trade show, or something around the event, like the bust that we just did with I forget which trade show that was, and more just kind of creative, almost like, I hate the term, but like guerrilla marketing almost, just to see, one, how crazy are they thinking about, new campaigns of stuff to try. And I wouldn't ever expect those things to really succeed. If they did succeed, great. I just want to see that somebody's down to try crazy shit and knows that it might not fail and will forget about it quickly and have a short memory about the fact that it failed.
Yeah. And that's, what I'm looking for here is, we know that MarTech is like super crowded, and everybody, if you're a lay marketer, you're like, man, all these tools sound like they do the same thing. And so what we know, you and I know that to win in MarTech, you can have the absolute best tool in your category and not win, because you didn't get out there. You didn't get it out there in front of the right people at the right time, fast enough, in the right way, clear enough, differentiated enough. So standing out is what helps. And so what I'm looking for here is just an understanding that, we're in this crowded MarTech space. We might sound the same as a company in a completely different category, so it's confusing to people. So how do we win in that kind of a world? And looking for them to say, well, we've got to stand out and we've got to be different. And so maybe I ask the question in a different way. You know what I mean? Because maybe they haven't done something super exciting in the past, but how do they think about it? And do they understand that? Do they understand the importance, I guess, of marketing and being different in marketing when it comes to MarTech? And there might be other industries too where, same thing, where you gotta be different. But man, MarTech, there's 9,000 tools. It's that seems super crowded. So yeah, I'm looking for, do you understand that crowdedness, and do you understand how marketing can really help? Marketing can actually take a bad tool and make it the number one revenue generator. And it's happened a lot of times in the past. And so yeah, just that understanding. And do you have, and then what do you do? So you have that understanding, and then do you have some interesting ideas and we want people that'll have ideas that are in the sphere of crazy, but still within our cultural, our acceptable, amount of crazy. And so I think I'm looking for people that kind of I understand the place you're at in the market now, and you can't do things you can't do really nuts things because you're already, you've established this, what people expect from you. So you can't go too far out of that, but there's still room in there to play in that surprised element space. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for.
For a bad answer, one of the things that came to mind for me are people who try to recycle playbooks that they've used at previous companies, because I don't know if I've ever seen a playbook from a previous company work exactly the way you think it will at your next company. So if they're just trying to recycle things that they've already done before and be like, hey, it worked here, it's going to work here, that's a big red flag for me too.
Yeah, and honestly, for a demand gen role, you should do a lot of research before you get onto these interviews, and just have some ideas already of what you would do differently, from what you already see either on the website or in ads or on social. So make sure you come into these interviews prepared. Don't come in and we ask now, I ask, hey, have you heard about metadata before? Especially as a demand gen person. And honestly, at this point, if you're a demand gen pro, this is going to sound weird, but if you're a demand gen pro and you haven't heard about metadata and you're applying for one of our jobs, I'm going to be like, where do you hang out then? Because we're all over LinkedIn, and we target anybody with a demand gen title. So have you done your research?
You've probably fed them with a DoorDash gift card. In all
yeah, they've gotten $100 from me already. So what else do you want?
So you mentioned something that I think it was not planned in this outline, but I do want to talk about it here because I think it fits perfectly. So we don't have to say the name of the person, but it was a candidate that we were interviewing for this role, and they did something crazy tactic-wise in the interview process. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was awesome. So we had somebody that ran ads to us individually, I think. And it was pretty, like, I don't even, still to today, I know this person ended up getting their LinkedIn account banned for like a week because of how they targeted us. But like, holy hell, we were like, what is, I remember I said to you, like, do you see this? I'm like,
yeah.
am I seeing this right?
Nuts.
Yeah. It was like literally an ad. Hey, Jason, like, you should hire me. I'm like, wait, what? This is in the ad area of LinkedIn. I'm just like, whoa, that's fantastic, And so like, yeah, that was a pretty, that's never happened to me before in my career, ever. That was cool. Yeah.
That was sweet.
That was cool.
Alrighty.
So burn your LinkedIn account,
yes.
for a job. Totally acceptable.
Take one thing away, take that away. Next question. I'll let you start with this one first. What's your experience with audience building, and how do you build audiences?
Yeah. This one again, I'm looking for people who understand that targeting is like one of the most important things in B2B in paid advertising. Because yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to go through the whole reason. They understand why it's so important, to like be interesting and do interesting targeting and test targeting and just not be satisfied. You know what I mean? With like, if somebody comes in and say, oh yeah, I look at the industry and, the job title and number of employees, amount of annual revenue. I'm like, oh, so nothing. You have nothing in there basically. So if they start with that and they end with that, it's like, okay, you don't really know, you don't understand the value and the importance of targeting. What I'm looking for is digging down into layers deeper. This is where I start, and then I layer on intent, and I understand the intent differences between a Bombora and a G2, and how I would use those differently. And then I understand technographic data, and like I can understand, so I'm looking for the understanding that there are just massive sources of data out there, that aren't just like Sales Navigator and Zoom Info, that you can tap into and then if you're taking data from several places and you're putting it together yourself, that's like the holy grail, is that you're not just relying on a tool. You're saying, hey, if I just use this tool, then I'm doing the same thing as everybody else using this tool. So I understand the importance of targeting in B2B, and I have a unique perspective, or I do this in a unique way. Now, if they've done something as awesome as scraping websites for intent data on their own, then I'm like, oh shit, you really get it. Or if they're like curious about finding new sources of data or creating their own, then I'm like, okay, this person really gets it. You don't have to be that far, like that's really advanced. But if you kind of understand, you're out of the firmographic, and you're into the other ones, I think that's the most important.
So a couple things just to fill in, because I'm pretty sure we would say the same exact thing. I'll start with the bad answer first. People that use audience expansion. So that's actually a very loaded question, and if they answer that incorrectly, then it's another big red flag for me.
That's how I get so many leads. You'd have no idea.
And then the other thing, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but it's asking questions to understand like what makes a good customer, like for metadata. So specifically ads and ad count, on different channels and how to find that information. And, they may not have the data source ready to, target those people, but if they're at least asking those questions and they're curious about what are other data points that we could potentially find ourselves or scrape and then turn that into targeting criteria that's more unconventional and not being used by, your direct competitors. Because I want to be told stuff that I don't know right now.
Yeah, and like you said an important word, competitors. If you're using all of the standard targeting, then guess what? You're probably targeting the exact same people as all your competitors, and you're not giving yourself like the outskirts of that Venn diagram. You know what I mean? You want to be over here and like getting onto the people that, you're just kind of on the edge, but your competitors probably aren't getting in front of. And so really the only way to do that is by having some special unique way of doing it for yourself, that maybe combines several sources, but you're still, you're not just relying on one source that everybody else is.
Last question, and then we're done for the soapbox episode. So would you say you are more creative or analytical? What are you looking for?
Yeah, this one I just, I don't know if I'm going to keep asking this, but because I don't know if I get, I don't know how I really use this. Because honestly, you could say either one as long as you've got a mix of both. You know what I mean? I think is the real thing here. So if you're like, oh yeah, I use data to drive 100.
I can tell you what you wrote in the blog post.
Okay, good. Yeah.
The answer you're looking for it. No, I'm kidding. But it's in the blog.
And we'll see how close I am, or maybe I've shifted. I'm looking for the mix. So if somebody comes in, they're like, oh yeah, I make 100% of my decisions based on the data. No, there's no gut in there. You don't understand attribution then. You know what I mean? So then I'm like, okay. But then the other side of the spectrum would be, oh yeah, no, I just do what I think looks good, and then I don't really look at the data because it's going to work. So I'm looking for something I think in the middle, which is, I really like to be creative, and I like to come up with new ideas, but I'm always looking at how those are performing. I'm looking at what are the results. I'm using that to feed data back in, so I make something different next time. And I'm shifting it. I'm not always doing the same thing and having to learn the same mistakes over and over. So I'm looking for the mix, of a hybrid answer on that one. Is that what I said before?
Yeah, it's almost like you just read the blog post. Yes, no, you're right.
Right.
So I would say, for me, and it really depends on the makeup of the marketing leader, but I would almost try to hire someone who maybe fills a little skill gap. So if you're super, super analytical as the marketing leader, do you need to hire another super, super analytical person? I mean, you could.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, but I think I would try to hire for a skill gap so you have different perspectives. I think that's what would be most important for me. And then I think, even I probably put myself in this bucket, but I'm more creative than I am analytical, but I'm naturally curious about numbers. So I still know the questions to ask and the types of things to be looking for. Now, I can't always do the analysis myself, but if you can at least talk the talk and know what to ask about, that's good enough for me.
Yeah. Yep. So this one is it's kind of a softball question for people because there's really no right or wrong answer. I think it's just we're really looking for people that understand, why both are important, and how you use both together. You don't err too far on one side or the other because the answer is somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
I dig it. Well, we just ran through all 7 questions. I would say that was fun and wasn't just us reciting the blog post. So I thought that was pretty good. What'd you think?
Yeah, no, this is fun. I mean, it's always good to kind of think about these things because like I said in the beginning, you get to hiring and sometimes you don't have a standard set of questions, or you're like, oh, I'm not getting the right, I'm 45 an hour long interview and I'm not, I'm leaving it and not having a clear understanding if it's the right person. So I think it's just, the most important thing is to have questions identified ahead of time, and have those questions be ones where it's touching on the things that are important to you and how you think about marketing, to make sure that person is going to be able to expand on what you've done already, but then also, like you said, you want to bring in somebody that has some different thoughts too. So if you just bring in this, oh, we think the same way on this. Great. Well, you're just extending yourself versus getting new ideas, new approaches, new potentials, into the team. So I think that's the other thing too, is be okay with it being not somebody that's exactly like you or thinking exactly like you, and make sure you set up those questions so that there's room for those answers.
Awesome. Well, we've been getting some good feedback on DGU lately, so keep questions and topic suggestions coming on LinkedIn or replying to the emails that we send out weekly. So we appreciate it, and we'll see you guys next week on Demand Gen U.